Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next session of the NetPoint GPM conference. For this session this morning, we're going to be talking about the last planner process, some pole planning, the IPD process, and how we use NetPoint to interact with that. So today we're going to walk through how we implement NetPoint using Last Planner, the Last Planner delivery system. We're going to touch on some of the Last Planner process and the steps that we take to get to a complete Last Planner process. We're going to take a look at some real life examples that I've utilized in the past. And we're going to touch on kind of the workflow and how NetPoint can improve that workflow, be a part of it, and feed information in between the office and the field. As I said, my name is Nick Gendron. I'm the director in the Pacific Northwest office. Been with PMA for 6 years now, and most of that time has been working with general contractors. Even prior to PMA, I worked for many general contractors. I was very close with the Last Planner and IPD process with pole planning. I'm very familiar with how some companies do it. And over the course of my career, I've just kind of focused in on some of the good parts about pole planning and gotten rid of some of the more difficult parts. And what we're going to talk about here today is how I have kind of evolved this plan and this process into something that works really well. And I'll show you how I utilize NetPoint in that process to inform the field and inform the project team. I've worked on a lot of mega projects in my career that utilize Last Planner, some successfully, some had more difficulty, and that's kind of where I developed these tools. And so we'll see if it works for you guys, then that's great. One of the more notable and more recent projects that I've utilized Last Planner on is a project down in Menlo Park, California, working for a high technology company. We built a very large head office, and it was a really great project to be a part of. There were a lot of subcontractors, a lot of moving pieces, and we were able to utilize this process to a successful completion. So, all right, let's get into it. Here we're going to talk. I'm sorry. Here we're going to talk about some of the steps to the pole planning process. Some of you may be familiar with it. This is utilized on a lot of construction projects, mainly a lot of healthcare. I've used pole planning on IPD process is utilized in a lot of healthcare. But these are the kind of the steps that a typical pole planning process will go through. Start with a pole plan, or start with a Primavera schedule or a Microsoft project schedule. Typically it's a level 1 schedule with milestones, or it's a level 3 schedule with a little bit of detail in it. Maybe it's high level bars for scopes of work. And you're going to utilize those milestones to pole plan off of. What I typically look for is I'm looking for milestones that are 6 to 8 weeks worth of scope. That's something where I probably have the most information to speak knowledgeably about this scope of work. I'm probably 2 weeks out. So I'm going to be pole planning 6 to 8 weeks worth of work, just about 2 weeks prior to start of construction of that scope. So you go through the pole plan. The next step here is, once you get the pole plan done, you've got all your sticky notes on the board, you've got to validate your pole plan. And that's where you're adjusting and revising your plan based on what's been put up on the board. Sometimes, you know, we're hoping to hit this 6 or 8 week milestone, but maybe when we poll planned it, it became 10 to 12 weeks. So adjusting and revising, going back and making sure your plan fits within the window of time that you're looking for is very important. Out of that, once you get a schedule that you've agreed on, and this is our poll plan, you want to do weekly work plans. This is something that you can send out to the field. This is something that a superintendent or a foreman can communicate to their crew, and you can build off of this plan. The next step here up at the top in the green, this is where poll planning gets really important. Checking back in with your poll plan, checking back in with your schedule, checking back in with how you're executing the job. This is very important. Sometimes this is a missed step where people don't enjoy poll planning because it doesn't work. Well, you have to check back in with it. You've got to see how you're doing based on what you planned. And we're going to talk a little bit about how NetPoint in the coming slides. We're going to talk about how NetPoint can improve that process, improve the flow of information. So we'll get to that in a little bit. One of the reasons you want to check back in with your plan is sometimes your plans change. Sometimes, you know, you get an RFI, change order, there's a roadblock of some sort. You need to adjust your plan based on those roadblocks, based on the issues that are coming up. If we poll planned this thing and we got it into 8 weeks and something comes up and it pushes it out to 10 or 12 weeks, that needs to be part of the plan. We can no longer execute an 8-week plan in a 12-week time frame. So these are kind of some of the steps here that we're going to look at. We're going to look at how we go through these steps, some of the pieces, and how NetPoint can be integrated into this. This is a really great example of a level 1 schedule. High level milestones, maybe some large bars. This is where it all starts. This is a project that we're going to utilize throughout this presentation. And as you can see, some of these bars are really big bars. There's really good milestones in here: completion of foundations, concrete decks. There's some milestones for topping out electric or topping out steel. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for large scopes of work that we can poll plan 6 to 8 weeks out. So this is what we're going to utilize. We're going to go through this first step here. This first step, as you can see, got some examples here. We're going to take a long 95-day east concrete decks activity, and we're going to poll plan that into the minute detail with all of our subcontractors to get to a level of detail where we feel confident that we can execute the work. So we're taking a high level schedule, level 1, level 2, going into a level 3 schedule, and poll planning it so that we can communicate it to the field how we're going to execute this scope of work. Like I said, we're going to do this poll planning about 2 or 3 weeks out. The reason that you do it 2 or 3 weeks out is that's where you have the most information about that scope of work. Maybe you have the most confidence with the drawings. All of your subcontractors are on board. You can get everyone scheduled. Maybe they're already on site at that point. They're mobilizing. This is where you've got all of the key players to complete this scope of work. So that's why we want to do this 2 or 3 weeks prior to construction. So now we're going to conduct our poll planning session. I don't know how many of you have been a part of this process. Maybe some of you are very familiar with this process. Sometimes it can be pretty stressful or it can be kind of difficult sometimes getting all of those different personalities into a room. The key things about conducting a poll planning meeting are having everyone present that can feed information into our pull plan, we can get the most out of it if everyone's there. I'm talking about your subcontractors, superintendents, project managers, project engineers, anyone with a vested interest in this scope of work that we're pull planning. It's really important to have a scheduler in the room and having a facilitator in the room. We're going to talk a little bit about that and around facilitating the conversation. But conducting a pull plan meeting is typically, it could be a half a day. It's carving out that time to get a detailed schedule around, I'm so sorry, I'm behind here on my slides. I'm so excited about talking about this topic. It's something that it's really important to get everyone in the room. It can take probably 3, maybe 4 hours at times, and that's just putting Post-it notes up on the board. You can see this visual here. It shows a nice long board with a bunch of pretty Post-it notes on it, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here. So facilitating the conversation in a pull planning session. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love to be a facilitator in the conversation in pull planning. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people that provide a lot of great information, and that feeds your schedule. The last planner process and pull planning is about commitments. Those commitments are things like the activities that you're doing, that you're completing. They kick off another contractor. Therefore, what you're trying to do is you're trying to identify what you are going to give to the project and what you need, what you're going to get in order to give that to the project. So doing these Post-it notes, you want to make sure that everyone's coming into the room knowledgeable about their scope of work. On these Post-it notes, you've got different colors for maybe different contractors. You want to have the area or the location of where the work is being performed, the activity description, which, like I said, that's kind of what you give to the project, the predecessor, and that's what you're getting, and then the duration. And when I say the activity description and the predecessor are kind of the I give, I get, what I mean by that is maybe I'm giving that foundation. I'm pouring the concrete for that foundation. So I'm giving you a slab on grade foundation. But what I need in order to do that is formwork and rebar. So I'm going to list those things out on this Post-it note. What that's doing is that's creating logic. That's creating a relationship between two contractors, a commitment between two subcontractors. So those are the kinds of discussions you're going to have in the room. When a subcontractor is filling out this Post-it note, they go to the board, they put it on there, and they're saying, you know what, this is what I need, and this is what I'm going to give. You're going to talk about any constraints or roadblocks that they may have in order to give that or complete that work. Any safety concerns, material availability, labor availability, equipment availability, stuff like that. I really enjoy this piece of pull planning because you talk about things like the electrical subcontractor doesn't necessarily know that they can't perform their work in this location because there's a crane flying steel overhead. Those are the kinds of conversations that you want to have come up in the room because you've got everyone in the room that's responsible to complete this work. So enough about facilitating the plan. Let's talk about how we get the plan into NetPoint and how we distribute that. Pull planning is all based on the Post-it notes, all based on the information and the conversation that you're having in the room. It's what you do with that information that really impacts this process in the next steps. Like I said, I don't know how many of you are familiar with pull planning, but there's a lot of times where, you've got this board full of Post-it notes, which you're looking at up here on this slide, and you've got to put it into a schedule. And so what you do is you have everybody in the room for 2 or 3 hours, and you've got these Post-it notes on the board, and we did a great job pull planning. And now you say, okay, everyone, thanks so much. We're going to have our schedulers put this into a schedule, and we'll get back to you in a couple of days. And that doesn't really work, because right now we're not even really sure if we have met our milestone. We have our milestone and we've worked back from our milestone, but maybe we are a couple of weeks out. So we put it in, we have our scheduler put it into Primavera or Microsoft project, and we distribute it to the team a couple of days later. And one of the subcontractors says, oh no, that's not how I wanted the work to go. So we need to readjust the schedule and redistribute the schedule. This is where the pull planning process kind of falls down a little bit, at least in my experience, because if you're doing this process 2 or 3 weeks out, you could take the whole 2 or 3 weeks just back and forth trying to get this plan finalized so that you can execute it on day 1 of construction. So here's where NetPoint comes in. NetPoint is an easier tool. It's very graphical path. It's very visual, and it's something that we can, with minimal amounts of training, get all of these Post-it notes into a NetPoint schedule where we can send it out to the field. And I'm going to show you here. I'm going to show you a little slide. We're going to take 45 seconds to create 3 Post-it notes that we have up on the board. And those Post-it notes are going to be to install some conduit, pull some cable, and terminate that cable. They're all 40 days, but these are the types of items that we've identified on Post-it notes, and we're having these discussions in the pull planning session. So we're going to create our activities. We're going to create the logic associated with them. And it's going to take us 45 seconds to do. And you can see on the screen, there's not a whole lot of advanced NetPoint abilities being used here. We're not we're not doing any cost loading. We're not looking at histograms. We're creating a schedule, activities and logic, and we're moving on. 45 seconds and we've done 3 activities. The whole point in trying to show you this is to say, you know what, this process, if you took a project engineer or your scheduling team, did some simple NetPoint trainings, you could be creating this schedule as Post-it notes are going up on the board. This is something that I've done. You take that 2, 3, 4 hour meeting, and at the very end of it, you have a product that you can produce for the team to go through. You can validate your pull plan right in that session. It eliminates that back and forth. It eliminates the, okay, everyone, we'll distribute the schedule when it's ready. It's something that is quick, it's easy. The things to keep in mind, though, are that you have to have your Post-it notes with predecessors and successors. This is a very logic-driven thing. You can see what we've created here on the screen is a full-fledged, detailed schedule out of a pull planning process. This is actually a pull planning process that I did. This is an example that I'm utilizing from a project I did a couple of years ago to get those concrete decks. This is all of the detail for the MEP inserts, the rebar, placing and finishing the concrete, and then moving on to the next deck. This is, it's got all the logic in it. We worked backwards from a milestone. We've created this schedule, was able to hand it out in the meeting. And even if your schedule, your pull plan is the 10 and 12 weeks, maybe you're a little longer than 8 weeks, you're not meeting your master schedule's milestone. In that meeting, you can check in and say, hey, everyone, we're at 10 weeks. We need to be at 8 weeks. What can we do? And we can use NetPoint, kind of manipulate where our logic is. Maybe we need a contractor to get another crew on board so we can reduce some of these durations. And that can happen in the initial pull planning meeting. And that's very important. I stress that because I find so much value in being able to create a schedule that we plan to execute in 2 weeks in one meeting, and we don't have a lot of back and forth. There's a couple different ways now. Once you have this NetPoint schedule, you've got your pull plan. There's a couple different ways to integrate it into your master schedule. And I've done both of these. I've seen it done both ways. The first one here, importing as a standalone. If you were to import this into Primavera, into Microsoft Project, into Excel, which by the way is something I know that is a topic here at the NetPoint conference that we'll touch on in another session. So look forward to that. But importing as a standalone, you can export from NetPoint, you can import it into Primavera, and you can keep each one of these schedules separate and tie it to a milestone in your master schedule. Seen this done. It works really well. The thing is, there's a lot of schedules that you're going to be going through. You have to pull plan your entire job. You're dedicated to pull planning every aspect of the project at that point, because all you're doing is tying to high-level milestones in your master schedule. It means that there's going to be a lot of schedules to keep track of, a lot of schedules to keep progressing. It may require maybe a larger, more knowledgeable team to utilize NetPoint, Primavera, keeping all these balls in the air, trying to progress each one of them. One of the nice things is, though, that each one of these pull plans becomes its own scope of work that you just can hand a team and they've got it. So once it goes into Primavera, it doesn't matter. You've handed it off to the team and it's only their scope. They're only focused on that scope of work. It kind of creates more of a siloed effect. The second way to do it is to integrate it into a master schedule. And this is my preferred way, I think, just because it's a lot easier to take a NetPoint schedule and create one master project schedule. Your master project schedule is meant to evolve. It's meant to be your construction tool and your reporting tool. And so you need to be able to get both out of it. You need to be able to report to your project management, your upper management, your client, your owner, but you also need to be able to build off of it and track yourself off of that. So integrating it into the master schedule is maybe your master schedule has really high level bars and you're taking your NetPoint schedule, your pull plan, and replacing that high level bar with your pull plan. You're still creating these logic ties to your milestones that you're reporting off of, but it's fully integrated at that point. So those are just kind of two different ways that you can do it. I've seen it done both ways. Both ways have been successful for me. I just think I prefer the integration. I like having a fully integrated master schedule. It also makes it very easy to progress. Next here, I wanted to show you the difference between a NetPoint schedule and a Primavera schedule. And both have their pros and cons. They're both utilized in different ways because of those pros that each of them have. And there's other software out there as well. A lot of the pull planning software you can get does virtual sticky notes, virtual Postit notes, where there's not so much emphasis on logic, but that doesn't translate to a schedule very well. What you're looking at here is you're looking at the same exact schedule in NetPoint and Primavera, and you can see that NetPoint is a very visual tool. It's that graphical path method. It's something that you can take out into the field. You can give to a superintendent or a job foreman, and you can build off of it. And you can see the relationship between your scope and another subcontractor's scope. I have actually, it was a very proud moment for me when I walked out into the field and saw NetPoint schedules from pull plans posted up in job boxes. It's a very proud moment. And that's what what crews are building off of, because they can see their interaction, they can see their relationship with the work and with other subcontractors. So that's something to keep in mind, to just point out. Another interesting thing is when I'm communicating my work to maybe an upper level management, they want to see, they want to see it in a visual, the project in a visual way. It's the same for the field. The field wants to see it in a visual way. That's what they're going to follow. They're not going to follow the detailed, all the minutia that goes into maybe a Primavera schedule. So, like I said, after you've done your pull plan, this is where kind of the rubber kind of meets the road, is doing your weekly meetings, doing your weekly work plans, following up with the plan that you have created in your pull plan. Something that's sometimes put by the wayside, because once you've gone through your 3 or 4 hour pull planning session, oh my gosh, that was exhausting. We've got a plan, give it to the guys, they'll go do it. It doesn't always work that way. And this is why I stress so much, you've got to follow up on your plan. And I'm going to also talk to you a little bit about how NetPoint can help you follow up on your plan, some tools that you can get out of NetPoint. But following up on your plan, doing weekly meetings, catching up on progress, talking about any of those RFIs, change orders, impacts that you've experienced on the project, those are really important. It's really important to talk about those, because if they start to impact your work, then the original plan that you created a couple of weeks ago is no longer relevant. You need to adjust your plan. You need to say, hey, you know what? We've been doing really good. We've been getting all of the work that we have planned done, but now we've got this change order and we need to stop work. This 8-week schedule is going to become 12 weeks because we don't anticipate getting an answer or getting material for another couple of days, whatever it is. That now needs to become your plan. You need to execute that as your plan. Another important thing during the weekly meetings is to check in with progress. If you were to take your pull plan, just progress the activities that you completed during the week. You can take that back and put it into your master schedule. That becomes your progress meeting. Instead of having individual, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly schedule update meetings, these weekly meetings become your progress, because these are the activities that you've incorporated into your master schedule. So, how can NetPoint help? One of the ways that NetPoint can help is by utilizing this tool that you're seeing on your screen here. This is a weekly work plan that I've used. This is something that after you've got NetPoint, you've got your NetPoint schedule, you can export all of those activities to an Excel format. This is an Excel format that I've used in the past, and all it does is it lists out your activities. You can plan them out on a week-by-week basis, and you can check in with, what did I say I was going to get done last week, and what did I get done last week? So you can get kind of a percent complete. You can check in on how you're doing. Maybe your percent complete is not so hot because of those materials that you're waiting on, because of that change order. At least you have documentation. You've got a reason why progress has been slow on this job, because of this stuff. We haven't been executing our plan because we've run into these issues. Now our plan is to do this, and that's where you can see we've got the look ahead as well. If this is something that maybe you guys are interested in, you can reach out. Like I said, this is something that I'm very passionate about, and if you guys have any questions, please reach out. This is something that's near and dear to me, and I just think that implementing these tools can improve the pull planning process, the last planner process, your IPD project. It can improve so much. Last thing here I want to talk about is the calendar. just to kind of give you a visual, we talked about pole planning 6 to 8 weeks worth of work. We talked about doing our pole planning a couple of weeks before, and this is what this is showing. This is just saying, hey, you know what? We're going to do our pole planning session at the beginning of the month. We're going to be confirming, revising, validating our plan all the way up until we start doing our construction. Once we start doing construction, we have to hit these weekly meetings. This is something that, like I said, is really important. Check back in with your plan. Check back in with how you're executing it. But this will give you just an idea of the pole planning process. I hope you guys learned something. This is, like I said, near and dear to me, and I'm here to help. The next thing that we'll kind of do is maybe Zoe can pull up some questions for me. If you guys had any questions during that time, maybe now's the time to check in.
Great. So our first question is, what do you see as best practice regarding how last planner requirements are addressed in the owner or prime contractor contract, as well as the prime subcontractor contract?
That is a great question. Those best practices are that has to be at the very beginning, like the question asked, that the contract is really key. I have actually seen contracts where it's spelled out how much time a superintendent will need to dedicate to pole planning sessions. Just because those pole planning sessions, they do kind of take up a lot of time. They can be 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, maybe on a weekly basis. The nice thing is the weekly check-ins only have to be 15 to 30 minutes because all you're doing is checking in. But that time that's spent away from the job site does need to be addressed in the contract. And that's something, if you're running an IPD job, that is definitely part of the contract, that you will be doing short interval scheduling. But pole planning, if you're dedicated to doing pole planning on a job, it should be in a subcontract. It should be in a general contract. Even owners, some owners in healthcare, I've seen owners in the contract stating that we will do pole planning, and the owner will be a part of pole planning. They want to see the process, and they want to see how the job gets executed based on the plan.
Okay, our second question is, what is your recommendation for the max number of attendees for a pole session?
Oh, that's a good question. And I don't have a maximum number. I have been in some really big pole planning meetings, and it does get kind of loose sometimes when you've got a lot of people, but sometimes some of those people are really crucial to the job. And that's where facilitating pole planning sessions is so crucial. Getting people involved, getting people to get out of their chair, come to the board, talk to everyone. That's where it's key. So a max number, I've been in pole planning sessions with 30 or 40 people, and that was on a really large project. It was a multi-billion-dollar project. Sometimes you only need a dozen, maybe 15. You just want to make sure that all the relevant people are in the room. Sometimes there's conversations going on in the back of the room about how everyone's weekend was, but having a facilitator there to refocus everyone on the pole plan is really important.
Okay, our next question. How are change orders and time impacts managed with pole planning and the last planner method?
That's a good question. The way that I recommend that you address issues on a project in a pole plan is to put them into your schedule. Like I said, on doing those weekly plans, you have to incorporate those issues. You have to incorporate the change order into the plan. Put it in as an activity. Show a rough order of magnitude, a best guess at how long these items are going to take, how much they're going to impact the job. Those items, if they go unaddressed in a pull plan, they go unaddressed in your schedule, and activities draw out. There's no explanation, there's no documentation. All it is we're not getting progress. You want to show the reason why you're not getting progress. So address them, put them in your pull plan, redistribute the pull plan and say, you know what, we ran into an issue. This is now how we're going to execute our job.
Okay, the next question. Is this process best managed by the prime? What role should the owner have in the process?
This process is definitely best managed by the prime, I will say. But this is something that a lot of owners I've seen becoming more popular for an owner to be involved in the process. The owner, I feel, should be present, because sometimes some of those issues that come up are owners' responsibilities. They're things that need to be addressed. They're design issues that they're asks from the owner. They're owner furnished materials, owner installed materials. Some of those items are the owner's responsibility. They should be in the room. There should be at least a representative to be able to speak to those kinds of things. I've even been on projects where you're working on an owner's job site and there's some logistical issues on how you can get into the job site based on being on an owner's campus, or other activities happening around the project that the owner is responsible for. So the management of this process is definitely good for the general contractor, for the prime to be, really in charge of, but it's good to have the owner involved, have them informed, and have them be a part of the process, because there's a lot of information that they may be able to feed into it.
Okay, another question. Do attendees need to physically be in attendance, or can you do virtual or hybrid pull planning?
That is a great question. And you can do either. I'd say my preference, in fact, you saw me tripping up a little bit with my slides there. I prefer being in attendance. I prefer face-to-face. With the past couple of years, I understand that virtual is the way to go. But I like being able to interact with people. Making sure that everyone is interacting is important. One of the things that's really great about NetPoint and involving NetPoint in this process is that you can do it virtually, because those Postit notes, they aren't physical Postit notes. Maybe it's just the information that a subcontractor has. And again, it's got to have those key bits of information: location, the I give, the I get, and the duration. As long as you have those bits of information, you can facilitate the conversation and you can visually put it onto a NetPoint schedule and skip the Postit note. But I really like having the conversation. I like having the interaction with people. You can do either, whatever works best for you, especially in the current economical climate. But I really enjoy being in the room and being able to bring up all of these different topics that feed into a successful pull plan.
Great. So the sixth question we have is, someone said they really like your Excel weekly work plan, and if you would mind making the template available.
Yeah, sure. We can absolutely do that.
And another question. So how does the P6's activity step feature differ from your method of pull planning?
That's a good question. So with P6 steps, it falls under, one activity. With pull planning, this is an interaction between possibly multiple different entities. It's multiple different contractors. It's there may be start to start, maybe finish to finish. There's a lot more dynamic information that you're getting out of a pull plan and feeding into Primavera, where steps is more of a linear process. I know that you can do some some crazy things with Primavera as well. I know Primavera is very powerful, and utilizing the steps function is an option. But when you're doing a pull plan, a very complex pull plan where it's not so linear, not so many start or finish to start relationships, having the pull plan and the detailed logic within a pull plan, that's really important. And I find that replacing an activity with a highly detailed schedule from a pull plan is more effective, and it gives me more oversight as to how progress is happening on the job with all of those different interactions and different relationships.
Great. I think that's all the questions that we have.
Well, that's fantastic. I really appreciate everybody attending this session, and yeah, please reach out if you do have any questions. We'll try and make that weekly work plan available, and thank you so much.